Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Dive with the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, or RICI for short. We're a grassroots nonprofit of Jews and Christians working to combat antisemitism, educate about Israel, and promote our shared Judeo-Christian values. This podcast is produced by the Ocean State Current and is a bold exploration of the issues shaping Israel, America, Rhode Island, and the future of Western civilization. I'm your host, Maria Friedman, Executive Director of RICI, and I'm hoping this podcast brings you clarity to complex topics so that you have the knowledge and confidence to engage in informed discussions. Also, we lead candid conversations that challenge false narratives and provide historical, moral, and strategic context. From community voices to national thought leaders, this program amplifies perspectives often overlooked, and Deep Dive delivers news and views designed to turn the tide in Rhode Island and beyond. So with that, I am so pleased to introduce my special guest, Miriam, who is a local Iranian woman living in New England, who I've had the pleasure of connecting with recently. And I mentioned earlier about going beyond the headlines. The topic of what's going on in Iran has not really been covered much at all in the mainstream media. So I think this episode is going to shed light on the truth of what is happening and how it impacts us here in the US. And so with that, I'll introduce Mariam. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Maria. Thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to speak about Iran and why it matters now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So why don't you just start by introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about your background, etc.
So I'm Mariam. I live in New England and I'm Iranian. I actually first heard about the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel through Instagram. I saw that they were organizing for a rally in support of Iranian people, and that immediately stood out to me. So at that time, when many organizations were silent, they were publicly expressing solidarity with Iranians who were risking their lives in the streets. Since I was 1 hour and a half away from the location of the rally, I decided to attend the rally, and it was really, really supportive. Not a political opportunism, but a real solidarity with the people of Iran. I actually decided to be there not only to support people of Iran, but also to support people of Israel. Yeah, and I attended the next rally. So that's how the connections start.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you participated. And, we really were the only organization in Rhode Island to organize any type of rally or event in support of the Iranian people who are obviously in a very critical, dire situation, trying to fight for democracy and, overthrow a very repressive, oppressive regime. And so I appreciate you being part of that. And for those who might not understand the connection immediately, you know, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. And what Iranian people are trying to do is become a democracy, right? They want to get rid of this oppressive autocratic regime. And so we view them as our allies. In fact, we have been allies in the past, actually, before 79. And so it's an easy connection because our organization, RICI, doesn't just care about Israel, but we care about democracy and Western values worldwide. And so that's why we wanted to stand in solidarity. So why don't you let us know what is happening in Iran for those who don't know? What type of regime or government does Iran have, and what is happening?
Yeah, sure. So, Iran today is governed by a theocratic, authoritarian system established after the 1979 revolution. So, at the top, we have the supreme leader, an unelected cleric who holds ultimate power and authority over, the military, judiciary, intelligence services, and, even the media. Below him, institutions like the Guardian Council, but who is allowed to run for the office. So elections exist, but only on papers. So the Islamic Revolution Revolutionary Guard Corps functions not only as the military force, but as a political and economic pillar of the regime. It's a clerical, security state, which was the result of the coalition of the Islamist, Marxist, communists, who actually wanted to destroy the Shah's government in 1979 and made this revolution happen. And then the Islamists took over the power. So the Islamic Republic is not representing the people of Iran, is not representing the Iran. It's just, terrorist cult that has occupied in Iran since 1979. Now, what has happened recently is really significant. So there have been multiple protests against this terrorist regime throughout these years. And every time the people were, confronted with extreme violence. But now this one, the Lion and Sun Revolution. So since late December 2025, Iran has been experiencing the largest sustained unrest since 1979 Islamic Revolution. The protests began in late December when the shopkeepers in Grand Bazaar in Tehran shut down their businesses in response to the economic collapse. But that actually quickly grew into something much bigger. So nationwide protests involving workers, students, even children, ordinary citizens in every province and cities. So demonstrators have been calling not just, for economic reform, economic relief, but to the end of the ruling system itself, to the end of the regime, the terrorist regime. So on January 8th and 9th, people took to the streets by their millions across multiple cities, nearly in 400 cities in Iran. This was not just about economic frustration. Protesters openly called for the regime change and rejected the Islamic Republic and voiced support for Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of our late Shah, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, as a unifying, national figure and as the leader of this revolution. So they're calling on him to return to Iran and, lead Iran to a transition to a secular, democratic country. You could actually hear chants like Javid Shah, which means long live the Shah. And also, this is the final battle. Pahlavi will return. But, the regime responded with extreme violence, like it has historically responded with force. It has actually launched a brutal crackdown. Security forces, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and besieged militias, opened fire on protesters in multiple cities. Eyewitness reports actually large mass killings, large massacres of the unarmed civilians and citizens on the streets. More than 40,000 people have been killed in not just 1 month, in not just 2 weeks, in not just even 2 days, in several hours. More than 50,000 people have been arrested. More than 10,000 people have been deliberately blinded. So it was the deadliest internal crackdown in modern Iranian history. And then it was total blackout in Iran, no internet, the internet was shut down, no communication. But then the Islamic regime partially reopened the internet, not out of compassion, but because it was approaching total paralysis, because the regime also depends on internet. And the moment the blackout loosened, hundreds of videos, firsthand testimonies came out, poured into the social media, especially X and Instagram. And it was horrific. It was devastating, disturbing at an unimaginable scale. So we always understood that, the nature of this regime is actually violence, unleashed state violence. But what is now being documented is brutality at a different scale and, intensity. Bodies are reportedly left on the streets in major cities, buried in mass graves, sealed in, black bags, treated like refuse. Armed patrols roam around the cities just to, spread fear. Checkpoints everywhere to search people on phones if they are, if they have any protest videos or, social media activity like following Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi on Instagram or X. Many are arrested on the spots. Others are detained simply for having pellet wounds. The regime's violence does not end with death. Mourning families are harassed. They are forced to pay so-called bullet fee to, retrieve the body of their loved ones. They are actually forced to sign documents that the Mossad agents killed their children, their parents, their loved ones, their sisters and brothers.
And can you just explain really quick for those who don't know what's a Mossad agent in case they're not familiar?
So I think it's an intelligence group in
Mhm.
Israel. So
Exactly.
in every protest that we do in Iran, even now that I'm, talking with you, if they hear it, they might say, "Oh, she's an Mossad agent, so we cannot catch her, but we should, torture her family." So every people against Islamic Republic is called Mossad agent. That's their ideology.
Mm-hmm.
So family are even forced to have televised confessions, repeating regime narratives simply to recover a body. Proper, funerals are denied. Burials are carried out in, at night under heavy security. So so the killings didn't stop. Even they raided to the hospitals to abduct and to abduct the bodies who were under treatment, and they killed them, the injured protesters. And yeah, the situation is really bad. They are actually arresting the medical doctors who were helping the injured people, and no one is safe in Iran actually. But something else happens. So even the bloodiest, massacre of of unarmed civilians in the history of the mullah's regime has failed to extinguish the people's determination to, overthrow this regime and reclaim their country back, take their country back, take their dignity back, from the Islamic regime. What was meant to terrify has in many quarters intensified collective, anger and strengthened a shared sense of national purpose. Even now, like 2 days ago, was the 40th day memorial gatherings, which are actually culturally significant moments in Iranian civic tradition, became renewed points of mobilization. Again, people started to, chant slogans anti-government and in support of Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. They're not crying. If you see them, they are dancing, not out of, happiness or joy. They just want to show the regime, hey, we didn't defeat, we didn't give up. Um, Even protests resurfaced in major universities now, just recently from, I think, since yesterday that they reopened the university since Saturday. So the students are chanting again, directly targeting the supreme leader and the Revolutionary Guards, alongside supporting the Lion and Sun Revolution, Lion and Sun flag of Iran, and also Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. Despite repression, the determination to seek systematic change and regime change has not disappeared. So another important development is what we are hearing at the universities, not just the criticism of the Supreme Leader and the Islamic Republic. In campuses, actually, students are chanting slogans in Iran. You can't believe it. That the chanting slogans that directly challenged the entire 1979 revolutionary legacy, including figures and coalition groups that helped bring the Shah down, those Islamist, Marxist, and leftists. So, for example, they're saying down with the misguided mullahs, leftists, and mujahid who actually made this revolution happen and actually ruined the great nation that we had. So that's why we are saying make Iran great again as it was pre-1979. This is significant because it shows a debate the debate has shifted. It's no longer about reforming the Islamic Republic. It's about questioning and rejecting the revolution, you know. Some activists even are arguing that Iran is the first country where a younger generation openly reclaims its universities and academic environment from, you know, those radical ideologies, those lefties ideologies, communist ideologies. Because universities were once the backbone of the revolutionary in 1979, but today they are becoming centers of resistance against the very ideology that revolution produced.
Wow.
That's a
Wow.
profound reversal. Yeah.
Definitely. Wow, Mariam, that was a lot of really important information, and my heart goes out to you and your fellow people for, sticking up for this. This is absolutely atrocious what is going on and the deaths. So I do want to ask you, how your family members and friends are doing in Iran, and also I know you had mentioned a number, I think, of 10,000. I've heard reports of 40,000. I've even heard 100,000. How can we even know how many people have been brutally murdered? And most importantly, how is your family and friends doing?
Yeah, so reports say that more than 40,000 people, it is actually coming from the testimonies inside Iran, the medical doctors, you know, the hospitals, the people, the families. So at least 40,000 people have been killed and 10,000 were deliberately blinded. So about the family members and friends, they are surviving, not living. Um, yeah, fortunately, they were not physically hurt, but emotionally, every single person in Iran has been damaged, right? Because daily life is defined by fear, economic pressure, and uncertainty. People are exhausted, are tired, but they didn't give up. Um, so right now, their only hope is that President Trump keeps his promise. As he said, that America is locked and loaded. If they shoot at the people, America starts shooting at them. They're just hopeful that the help is on the way. Real help is on the way, and President Trump keeps his promise. Each conversation ends up in this. Oh, is America going to, strike them or not? You know what I mean? So this is the only hope that the people have. They're
Wow.
asking President Trump to keep his promise. Even inside Iran, I saw a video today that the person was, you know, um, interviewing with one media, uh, and she was saying that President Trump, act now. Even people wrote on the streets, President Trump, keep your promise. So that's why people of Iran, inside Iran or in diaspora, they're asking Israel and America to help the people liberate Iran and free people held hostage.
Wow. Wow. This is, really, again, atrocious things that are going on. And again, my heart goes out to you. And obviously, this is something that we should all care about. And so, I say this, not because I believe it, but why should the average American care about what's going on there? I mean, I obviously do, as somebody who, cares about Israel, cares about democracy, and cares about humanity worldwide. But, if somebody living in New England, why should this affect them?
Exactly. That's really a good question. Really. That's why we rallied every weekend just to make America aware of what is going on in Iran and why they should care about what is going on in Iran. Not just keep their distances from what is going on there because it's not a regional issue and it's not an issue for Iran. Islamic Republic is a threat to the whole world, not only to the Middle East, to the whole world. I have a very simple question. This regime is determined to have access to ballistic missiles and nuclear power. So imagine if it has this power. Now we are seeing what this regime is doing to its unarmed civilians. So what happens if it further, gets access to ballistic missiles and nuclear power? what does this regime do in the global stage? You know what I mean? So that's the most important thing, the first thing that every single human being on earth should really care about. Oh my God, this regime is not, behaving very well toward its own citizen, how it should behave in the world. And also, there are other things. So, regime change in Iran and the establishment of a national pro-Western government would significantly advance United States' interest in the region. For example, we know that the United States is spending tens of billions of dollars on military, operations in the Middle East now, a region that yields limited direct economic or political returns. So it actually um, can be, so imagine that we have a stabilized Iran aligned with Western norms. So how it can contribute to reducing this long-standing strategic overextension in the region. Or you can actually think about the economy. So now China has relatively actually access to almost free oil provided by Iran. So imagine that how is it is actually going to change the economy, power balance in the world, right? So by removing a regime that enables such arrangements, the United States would weaken China's strategic energy leverage and help restore a more balanced economic context. Uh, Even about the security, the Islamic Republic also represents a central ideological and operational hub for anti-Western, anti-American, and anti-Jewish extremism. Its hostility toward Jews and Israel, combined with its financial and ideological support for militant movements hostile to the U.S. interest, has had destabilized effect both rationally and globally. So the elimination of a regime that actively exports radical ideology would therefore align directly with US national security, Israel national security, and contribute to broader counter-extremism efforts. And as I mentioned, Iran's determined about the long-range ballistic missiles and the capability of potential nuclear weapons. So the time to act is now. Yeah.
Yes, I mean you just hit the nail on the head, but even just the first point of them having nuclear capabilities and them they have threatened to use them before, it should be concern to everyone, but you just outlined that perfectly. So you had mentioned, oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one more thing. So, from the security perspective, not only anti-American, anti-Israel, they also support Russia's war against Ukraine. They have further, sent some missile to Russia in order to be used against Ukraine. So a fundamental political transformation in Tehran would thus remove persistent source of direct and indirect threats to US and allied security. And yeah.
Yes, that's really a key point. I mean, everything that I would say America stands for and wants is the opposite of what Iran wants. I don't really see us currently aligned in any way, so I agree with you that it's definitely against US interests as well. And so I know you had mentioned, Islam before, but first, can you explain how this regime operates for those who aren't familiar with like an Islamic regime? Some people might not know. What does that mean? What does that look like? And then what is this threat of radical Islam? How is it affecting Iran, the region at large, and the world?
So as I mentioned, the Islamists took over the power in 1979 revolution, and from then we are seeing an authoritarian dictatorship in a clerical, way. So Islam ideology is actually anti-democracy. Islamic ideology actually rejects secular governance, opposes unrestricted free speech, restricts women's right, um, restricts individual liberty to religious authority, often favors something like state-controlled economic system, state-controlled governance, like what we see in Taliban, like what we see in IRGC, like what we see in Hamas, like what we see in Hezbollah. So that is how they are ruling our country. So in Islam, there is no separation between the government and the ideology. That is
Right, and it's called, for those who don't know, it's called Sharia law, right?
Sharia
When the
law.
law of the
Exactly.
land is governed by um, Islamic principles, right, that are restricting those rights, which is really obviously unfortunate. And I think here in America, we tend to take these things for granted that we can talk openly, we can criticize our government, we can have protests and assemblies like where you and I met. We can have freedom of religion, but it's not like that in Iran. So it's very hypocritical of these social justice warriors, especially these feminists that we see at college campuses and other protests that are doing anti-Israel protests, because they claim to be feminists, yet in Iran and other, Middle Eastern countries, right, women do not have the same rights that we enjoy here in America.
Exactly.
In many countries, I don't know specifically for Iran, but I know some surrounding Arab nations, women can't even leave the house without being accompanied by a man. Some countries, they can't even speak in public. They will be punished for that. So, let alone, other rights of all
Yeah,
these other things. So Sharia law, that's what it is. It's this Islamic governance that is happening, all over the region, but also in Iran, and the people are trying to overthrow that because it's extremely oppressive.
exactly. Even in Iran, women got jailed because of, the dress code. If they don't obey the rules um, imposed by Islam, they got jailed.
Right. And,
And
I
that is
think this
not our
is
culture. It is not our culture. It's the Islamic ideology
this
that
Islamic
has
ideology.
occupied our country.
Exactly. And I think this is such an important point to empathize or emphasize, excuse me, because, now in the media, if you say any criticism of Islam as a movement or as a political movement, they will call you Islamophobic, right? And so it silences people from speaking out and criticizing what is actually a poison that is damaging people's lives and killing people as well in countries like Iran and other countries throughout our world. So we have to be able to criticize it and speak out. And that's why we're trying to bring this conversation to light in the first place, at Rhode Island Coalition for Israel. And hopefully this reaches people all across the country and even world who might stumble upon this podcast, that we have to talk about this without worrying if people call us Islamophobic. If they call me that, I don't care, because I have Muslim friends, for example, who are peaceful, and they denounce radical Islam, and they see the dangers in it, and they stand for America and democracy. So this is not about demonizing people who practice the Muslim faith. It's about criticizing repressive Islamic regimes that are terrorizing millions of people across the world. And now in places like UK, I don't know if I'm sure you've heard, Miriam, that they have actually made it against the law to criticize Islam. And so you'll see videos of, rows of Muslims taking up a whole plaza or a whole street, and they're praying, and nobody can say anything. And they've even outlawed pastors from being able to preach, just outside on the microphone, right? Like if you walk through any city in America, anybody can say whatever they want as long as they're not being violent, or disturbing somebody's property. So this is how things happen. They can slowly start to infiltrate these Islamist laws into even Western countries if we're not careful. So this should serve as a warning for America to wake up to this threat. So I just really want to emphasize this because this is, a core reason why I wanted people to hear from you first. Because me as a Jewish person, if I speak about this topic, which I have, and our organization has done press conferences and other educational campaigns about the threat of radical Islam, even here in Rhode Island, because there have been concrete examples of anti-Israel, anti-Christian sentiment being shared by our local imams here at the Center of Rhode Island, which is our biggest mosque. But beyond that, I want people to be able to see that this is a threat worldwide to democracy. And so I really appreciate you saying that because again, as a Jewish person, they just might cast me off and call me Islamophobic, especially the more progressive people and even other progressive Jews, right? They will not stand on my side. So we have our own division, even within the Jewish community, of how to talk about this topic, let alone, the broader American community. So I just want to thank you for talking about this. And yeah, so tell us more, again, how since 79 this has affected Iran, this radical Islamic regime, Sharia law. How is it impacting the region at large? And what can we do about it? How can we support also the Iranian people that are fighting this fight at this moment?
So yeah, sure. I would definitely talk about it because it is not only me, experiencing um the things that we had been forced in Iran to, have Islamic ideologies, to pray, to wear the hijab that is actually obeying the Islamic religion and ideologies. So definitely I would talk about that. And also, this is not a threat only to the region, although that this regime, Islamic Republic, has funded, terrorist groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, all of them are Muslims, right? So the problem is that Islamic ideology want to be in the politics. You know what I mean? It cannot separate itself from politics. So that is the problem. And it has the ideology of, conquering the world, So, and imposing its laws and rules on everywhere, on the people living everywhere, conquering the world, and everyone in this world is forced to, become Muslim. So how Iranians became Muslim 1,400 years ago. So again, with force, it started with that, So this is how it works. Unfortunately, I have to be clear on that, and I have to be honest about that.
Yes,
We cannot
Muslim
censor.
colonization, right? And they
Exactly.
call Israel the colonizers, yet
Right.
Muslims have conquered and colonized so
It's
many different peoples and lands, including Persians, which were not originally Muslim
Muslims.
before. So,
Exactly. We were Zoroastrian and we were forced to become Muslim. So I cannot censor myself. This is the reality that happened in the history and it is going on. So even I was watching a podcast and even in Belgium, in Brussels, people are actually trying to push some legislation to impose Sharia law and segregate buses so that women and men can have separate buses. Imagine that. So, how ridiculous this is. And it is not only ridiculous, it is actually frustrating because you go to a country and instead of assimilating their values, their cultures, you are dictating to you to actually incorporate your ideologies, your Sharia law into the system. And that is actually very frustrating.
yes, that's definitely a huge threat. And I know you touched on this before, but if you can just articulate why you personally and other Iranian people support Israel and what Israel means to them and the Middle East region.
So yeah, that's very good question because actually, to understand why many Iranians support relationship with Israel and support Israelis, we have to look at different factors like Cyrus the Great. We have a biblical friendship. The two nations have biblical friendship. So, which goes back to 2,500 years ago when Cyrus the Great allowed the Jewish people to return to their homeland, Jerusalem, and rebuild their temple. So, this was not symbolic. It shaped Jewish history permanently. So, the relationship between Persians and Jews goes back to 2,500 years ago, and you cannot ruin that friendship. We are sisters and brothers. That foundation matter because it shows hostility is not historical. It is actually the ideologies of this terrorist regime, this cult that has occupied Iran. And even before 1979, Iran and Israel had strong relationships. Even we were one of the country with one of the biggest Jewish communities in Iran. We had around 100,000 Jewish people in Iran who had to escape Iran after the revolution because of the, ideology of the Islamic Republic. But before 1979, we had good relationships because of, because geopolitically both were non-Arabs states in largely Arab area. So we had pan-Arab nationalisms. We were concerned about Soviet expansion. We were concerned about regional instability. We cooperated through intelligence sharing, military cooperation, oil exports from Iran to Israel. We had economic exchange. And Iran under the Shah pursued a pro-Western, modern strategy. So Israel was seen as a technologically advanced and strategically valuable country, an ally to us. So after the revolution, the Islamic Republic built its own identity around opposition to Israel, United States, Western influence and Western values. And we know that it funds and arms groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, IRGCs, Hashd al-Shabi. So, and it is producing the ideological proxy warfare in the region. The regime uses Israel as an external enemy to consolidate internal control. But now people of Iran are saying that, hey, we don't want to be enemies to Israel or to America. We are friends to the West, to Israel, to all, countries in the free world. And moreover, Iranian know that, people of Iran know that IRGC and Hamas are the same. The brutality, the bloodshed, the misery they can do. They hate lives. They rape women. They kill children. They kill everyone. I mean, from children to old. So we will never forgive that, and nor forget. And we have the
And
same.
just to chime in, for those who don't know what IRGC stands for, it's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So that's basically the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And like you said, they're one and the same with these other terrorist groups who have this same broader goal of annihilating Israel, the Jewish people, and annihilating the West in order to expand their repressive Islamic ideology, but also this in general, their hateful ideology.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and also people of Iran see Israel as a, country with a functioning democracy, technologically advanced society, military strong enough to protect its own civilians, a consistent ally of the West. So that's why people of Iran actually are, good friend to Israel and support Israel because of the, innovation, rule of law, the nation that protects its citizens. So that's why we actually support Israel.
That's wonderful, and
And
we
people of Iran actually chant, no to Gaza, no to Lebanon, my life for Iran. They are rejecting ideological export of terrorism and revolution to the Middle East. And even after October 7th, people of Iran, even under repression, stood in solidarity with the people of Israel.
right. And again, this is what the media, the mainstream media doesn't want you to see. They want to just kind of generalize a whole region when there's actually so many nuances. And I am very grateful that, the Iranian people have stood with Israel and always have, even if they can't publicly show that, of course, because the regime is repressing their rights to speak out. But I do see us as natural allies. And you're right that Israel is really the only democracy in the Middle East at this moment. And not only are they protecting their own people, as you said, but they are actually protecting the other Arab countries from their own terrorists. And
Exactly.
so they're really doing a massive job at trying to keep the region secure and stable. I mean, for such a mighty country, maybe we can get a map shown later. It's the size of New Jersey for reference. It's a very small country that is surrounded by, over 22 different Arab states, Muslim states that are, large countries, and they have managed to, survive so far. But definitely the people of Israel stand with the people of Iran. And I wish, that there was more we can do. So I want to get back to this topic of these so-called social justice warriors that I mentioned earlier, or these human rights advocates. Why are they silent on the issue of Iran? Like, let's talk about this. Why aren't they speaking up, or why hasn't there been any rallies or protests that, at least that I've seen, on college campuses or other places?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we know that many on the political left have built their worldview around opposing Western power, especially the United States and Israel. The Iranian uprising complicates that narrative because here's the reality. The people of Iran are not chanting against America, are not chanting against, Israel, are not asking for socialism, and are not burning American flags. They are actually bringing American flags, Israeli flags, Ukrainian flags into their rallies worldwide. We can see in the rallies they're rejecting a radical Islamic regime. So that does not fit, into the ideological framework of much of the Western progressive media, because actually the Islamic Republic markets itself as anti-America, anti-Israel, anti-imperialism. So for some left-leaning media and activists, any regime that opposes the West is instinctively treated with caution when it comes to criticism. So there's a reflex to frame it as a victim of sanctions or, geopolitics rather than as an oppressor of its own people. Women are jailed, protesters are executed, children are killed, internet blackouts, ethnic minorities suppressed, billions spent on foreign militias just to export warfare, just to export terror. And but the uprising itself is actually challenging the progressive assumptions. The Iranians protest movement is anti-Islamist, is very nationalist, is, pro-Western, pro-Israel, and focused on secular governance. So that is why I think it doesn't align well with the narratives that cast the Middle East primarily through anti-Western and anti, Israel lenses.
Wow, Miriam, thank you for explaining that. I think you hit the nail on the head because, there is this red-green axis, right? This alliance between Islamists and also Marxist or very progressive left liberals, so to speak, that has formed. I don't know exactly when it started, but it's been around for decades and it's ever more prominent now. Of course, like you said, in these anti-Israel and anti-American protests that we've been seeing the last couple of years since October 7th. And that's really what it's about. And it also goes back to that word Islamophobic. Nobody wants to be canceled. Nobody wants to be called Islamophobic, right? Because it's all about inclusivity and you're in our club, but it's so hypocritical, right? I could point to so many examples examples with all these, I guess, movements or groups that kind of glob together. They jump on the same bandwagon, and again, it makes no sense, right? It's the same
Exactly.
thing as like these LGBT gay rights movements, for example. There was a parade in New York where they said all are welcome except Zionists. So, okay, so if you believe that Israel has the right to exist, you can't participate in the gay parade. There's just so many things that I could point to that are hypocritical, but this is definitely one of them. And I think it's, again, fear of being Islamophobic. I also think it's just lack of education. I think that a lot of these people, especially young people, they want to do what's trendy on social media, but they don't actually know the history of Iran. They don't know what Iran has been through. They don't know what the people there actually want. And who are they to say that they can speak for a people? I just think that that's absolutely ridiculous. So it's really making their movement, I think, look very bad right now and very stupid, to be honest. And that kind of leads into my next question, which is just the media in general. How have they been covering or really not covering what's happening in Iran? What are they missing, and why isn't the media covering this?
Okay. I actually wanted to say, to add that point, that freedom movements that reject Islamist authoritarianism deserve the same attention as movements that, criticize Western democracies. Otherwise, human rights become a political slogan, not a principle, right? So, yeah, but for the media, actually, several key aspects that many outlets underreport. The first thing was the number of death tolls, because I understand we don't have official, reporters there, but these demonstrations are not just, and also, moreover, the other factor that they misrepresent or underreport is the nature of the protest. These demonstrations are not just about prices or economic frustrations. They are explicitly demanding regime change. The scale of state violence. So independent activists are actually reporting death tolls and repressions far higher than the official figures. So that's why, I mean, in the media, yes, I understand we don't have official reporters, but that's why we follow the independent activists and human rights organizations, because they are actually reporting the um, true, at least much more trustable numbers and reports. Um, and also, the other thing that the media may misrepresent is the regime's narrative control strategies, because we know that the Islamic Republic has, its own lobbyists, even in the United States, and they often portrays um, the protest and, the people who are protesting like foreign agents, as I mentioned, Mossad agents, violent rioters. And they also try to falsify what people are chanting on the streets. So change their narratives and in the favor of the Islamic Republic. They have lobbyists in the United States. So we Iranians always are trying to follow the news that are actually reporting the most trustable, news and reports from Iran. But we also try to comment on the news that are misrepresenting something.
Inaccurate, exactly.
So, because what we learned, Maria, is that if we stay silent, their narratives will win. They change the narratives. They are actually, that's the effect that they are doing on, students here, on, average people in the United States. You know what I mean? So, that's why we should stand against them and we should change the narratives into the right narratives. What is going on, actually? And the other thing that they don't report is that the regime was so weak that had to import over 5,000 militias. I mean, not Iranian national, from Palestine, from Lebanon, Iraq, and Pakistan to kill the people in Iran. That's what the media doesn't cover. And why this matters? So millions of Iranians are, risking their lives to be heard, and because this is actually an existential threat for them in Iran. So the gaps in media coverage aren't just about what's reported; they shape how the world responds. When the reality of widespread repression, mass protests, state violence is underplayed, it makes it, easier for policymakers and the public to, misunderstand the nature of the crisis. So that's why many Iranians turn to social platforms like X. Thanks to X, that we can follow the actual news coming outside from Iran to the outside. For example, in the videos, you would see that the people are chanting, Javid Shah, long live the Shah, Pahlavi will return, Reza Shah, God bless your soul. These kind of slogans that they are not minor, they are not isolated, they are actually politically loaded. They signal something very important. Portion of the protest movement is not asking for, small reforms uh, of the Islamic Republic. They are rejecting the entire post-1979 regime, and they are referring Iran's pre-revolutionary monarchy. So that's a profound political statement. And yet, many mainstream outlets rarely highlight those slogans. Instead, coverage often frames the unrest primarily around inflation, unemployment, or social grievances. Economic hardship, I know, is real, but the chants tell you something deeper. People want regime change. People are done with the Islamic Republic. Islamic Republic is not representing Iran, is not representing the Iranian people. And yeah,
Right. Yeah, definitely. And that's why you said like there you're seeing chants and signs with Reza Pahlavi's name on it, right? Because they are calling on him to be the next leader, right? Because he stands for democracy. He's the oldest son of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, right before 79,
yeah,
before this repressive regime started. And so he's a key figure, and we have to keep a close eye on him. I believe he's safe in the US, right? Is
yes,
that's where I think, I don't know if he's in New
yeah.
York or yes, so definitely. Yeah, thank you so much for illuminating such an important topic. I really hope that people, again, the goal of this podcast is people dig beyond the headlines. That's why it's called Deep Dive, because you can't trust everything that you see in the media. Like you said, a lot of it is inaccurate or missing really key things. And I also see on my Facebook and other social media, I don't know, some of them must be bots because I see a lot of just bogus comments that are completely wrong, or people saying, oh, yeah, it's because Mossad's behind this, Mossad's behind this. They're so quick to blame Israel or Israel intelligence for everything. And it's just absurd, right? We have to be able to know what's actually going on, what the facts are. So I encourage people to follow Reza Pahlavi's page, the Crown Prince. Or exiled crown prince, as we say, because he's sharing important updates. So, how can the Iranian and pro-Israel communities work together? And is there anything else that you wish people would know about Iran right now?
So for the working together of Iranians and pro-Israel communities, we have common threats. The danger of Islamist extremism, the threat posed by regime-funded militias, the global rise of anti-Semitism, the destabilizing effect of proxy warfare. So I think these communities can work together on American campuses, especially co-host panels about Iran's human rights crisis, about the things going on in the Middle East, just to educate the students. Hey, if you are protesting in support of Gaza, they might not know if they were to live in Gaza, how they represent themselves in the United States, they would never have the right to leave. You know what I mean? Because they don't know what is going on there with their dress, how they present themselves. So this is very important to educate students about, the policies in the Middle East, about Iran, about Israel, and about what is going on there. and also highlighting Persian Jewish history, countering misinformation about regional politics, and advocating against anti-Semitism and Islamist extremism together, and exposing regime propaganda. These are, I think, the most common things and important things that they can work on. And also, moreover, after, Iran is free, in free Iran, uh, Iran could have trade, water technology, agriculture, and innovation partnership with Israel. And we are willing to do that. For example, we know that Israel is the best in, water desalination, agricultural technology, water recycling, and now Iran, unfortunately, is facing a very, very, very huge water crisis. So after Iran is free, we would definitely take advantage of the Israeli technology in water crisis to manage our, water crisis. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I do think that we, should work together as much as we can. And when I say pro-Israel communities, I also mean just pro-America communities. Everyone who cares about democracy and cares
Democracy.
about humanity should care about this issue and try and talk to their friends and families and tell them what's really going on. And it's really the innocent slaughter of all of these civilians who are trying to overthrow Islamic oppressive regime. I pray that they're successful. I will keep you and your community in my thoughts and prayers. I'm so glad that you yourself are safe, but I know there's a lot happening in Iran. And again, I hope the people listening to this podcast will also share it with other people so we can get more people aware of what's happening. And
Mhm.
is there anything else, lastly, that you'd like to share or something that you think was missing from this conversation?
So just for your last question, I just wanted to tell that Iran is not inherently hostile to freedom. It has a 2,500-year-old civilization. The Achaemenid Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great, wasn't just a superpower. It actually, many historians consider this policies of Cyrus and the Achaemenid empire an early expression of what we now call the universal human rights. Centuries before, similar concepts appeared in the Western political thoughts. So if people knew that Iran's deepest historical identity includes these values like pluralism, cultural respect, even religious freedom, they would see why so many Iranians today are fighting for a future that, capture that legacy, recapture that legacy, not just protesting instability. They are rejecting the current theocratic system because it betrays its own civilizational roots, not because they want to legitimate to imitate, Western society. So yeah, that is the one thing that I just wanted to mention about Iran. And thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity that you gave to me. And one more thing that I just wanted to add, now I remember. So now the people of Iran are calling for foreign intervention. I just want to tell that we Iranians know that war is a terrible situation. But the reality is that the people of Iran are actually calling for foreign intervention, like targeted military action against the oppressive, IRGC centers in Iran. You might think this is absurd, but if you follow how horrid the situation is under the Islamic Republic, I think you'd begin to understand. You see, the Islamic Republic has made life insufferable for people. So much so that they come onto the streets knowing that they're going to be killed by bullets, live ammunition, and arrest, torture, rape, and worse. The economy is ruined. The water crisis is really bad. The pollution in Iran is horrendous. We can go on and on. But what's important, the people see this, military intervention on Iran not like a war. They call it a rescue operation to liberate Iran and liberate the people held hostage.
Right, that's exactly what needs to be done. And like you said, Mariam, like people wouldn't be risking their lives in the streets if this didn't mean something to them and if it wasn't an extremely dire situation. So we have to stay tuned to the news. I'm praying that some help can come soon, God willing, to the people of Iran who are literally fighting for their lives. It's really, really sad what's happening. I hope the West can wake up to the threat that Iran poses worldwide and also, like we talked about, Islamism in general. I thank you so much. You're so brave for speaking out, for talking to me, on on this podcast, and having conversations in New England with your neighbors and things like that, so more people can get educated. I want to also encourage people to follow the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel on our social medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We're at RI for Israel. That's the number 4. And that way you can stay up to date with our future events, rallies. We hope to do more rallies in support of Iran, but hopefully we won't have to do too much more because there can be actual change and victory in Iran. So, again, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I look forward to continuing to stay in touch with you and doing this work alongside you as we fight for democracy, fight for truth. And I hope that your family stays safe.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and for standing with us. I really appreciate it, and this matters a lot for me. God bless America, God bless Israel, and God bless Iran.
Thank you so much. Well, everybody, stay tuned to our next episode. I'm Israel. Hi, stay safe out there, and tell your friends and family about this podcast. Bye.